right. One more screen share from me, and this is from I blog at Trojans Wire. That's under the Gannett USA Today umbrella. So we have a lot of partner sites in the College Wire network. One of them is Hawkeyes Wire, and Hawkeyes Wire captured this little comment from Indiana's Curt Signetti. He was asked about the challenge of playing Iowa next, and he says, "Well, it's a more difficult challenge than the last one for sure." Whoo, hello, yo. So Curt Signetti, I love Curt Signetti, in case you haven't noticed. We talked about him on Sunday night show as well, but he is unafraid to just spill out the blunt truth, say exactly what he thinks. He thinks Illinois ain't diddly. He just came out and said it. So with that as kind of our setup, our lead-in, Crash, is Illinois not diddly? Or, how do you look at the Illini going into this game? I mean, Ethan says, and I think he's right, chip on the shoulder, Fox Big Noon, carnival atmosphere in Champaign, but maybe just Illinois can't do jack squat. And this is a game where USC needs to go click, clack, and walk in and just blow the heck out of the Illini. What's your assessment of Illinois?
So I'm really interested in this game, especially because of what Curt Signetti has been saying. And I mean, keep in mind too, one quote that caught my eye after they, in his post-game press conference, was he just said, and I quote, "We broke their will." So, and keep in mind, Curt Signetti, as you said, Matt, is a guy who tells it as it is. Obviously, I hadn't heard much about him when he was at James Madison and his previous stops, but he's been doing great things his entire career. You got to give him that. And also, but really kind of, I think most people really started to notice what he was saying when he came out with the whole "I win, Google me" thing. And I mean, you Google him, I mean, he wins a lot. So but still, he comes out kind of arrogant. It's pretty funny, though. He could probably be a comedian after he retires from coaching. But what I think with going back to your "it ain't deadly," it's hard to say, just because I think, like Ethan said, they're going to be playing with a chip on their shoulder. They got Big Noon. It's going to be a lot of people there early, probably there 2, 3 a.m. in the morning. I mean, if I was an Illinois fan, and I'm not, but if I was going to Champaign, I'd probably stay up all night just to get my spot and be at Big Noon, even as an SC fan if I was going. But I think it's hard to say, just because I think this is USC's first true test. And like I've said, I think I'm really curious, is Illinois worse than we thought, or is Indiana better than we thought? And I think that's really a question that I won't see get answered until this game. So I'm not sure I get where he's coming from, especially after Indiana just did whatever they wanted. But it's hard for USC to come in and say that, especially when you haven't beaten them yet. So I don't want to say it's not like Illinois is going to be, completely lethal and going to, give USC a hard time. But I also don't want to completely write them off either and say that if USC kind of listens to Signetti and just thinks, oh, if we listen to Curt Signetti, we'll be fine. If they do that, that could get them in trouble. So I think it's somewhere between USC's got to come in confident and ready to play, but they also can't get too arrogant either.
So I'm going to call BS on Curt Signetti a little bit, because I think it's very easy to talk a big game when you've just won 63-10. You made it look like Illinois is, you basically made Illinois look like an FCS team. And, I think what he's realizing is the score is probably not going to be so dramatic against Iowa, because, even though Iowa is not, hasn't had an incredible start to the season, it's Iowa football. And, they have a very kind of clear identity, and, they're not a very strong offensive team, but I think that they're, still going to give Indiana a bit of a challenge on defense. Like Kirk Ferentz-led teams always give the opposing team, a challenge on defense. So I don't think the final score is going to look as impressive. So I think he's taking advantage of a big result and, what's seemingly going to not be a big result this week, and kind of doing a little pre-PR work where he's like, well, actually Iowa's a better football team. But I don't really think that that's true. I mean, you look at, how Iowa started the season. Mark Gronowski is 18th in the Big Ten in passing yards. Remind me again, how many teams are in the Big Ten? 18. So he is, last in the entire, out of all the starters in the Big Ten in passing yards. They can't throw the ball, and they're not going to throw the ball against Indiana. Indiana is going to take big advantage of that. They're probably going to put a lot of pressure on Mark Gronowski, who was obviously an FCS quarterback a year ago. And I expect them to be defensively dominant. I don't think that them winning this game is actually going to be very much more difficult. And I think, in fact, it could be easier. I just think that because of how Iowa's defense operates and because of, they're going to try to run the football, they're going to try to bleed clock, they're going to try to play their game. And, Kirk Ferentz-led teams tend to be very disciplined. He's been around. He's been doing it for a while. Whereas I think in the Illinois game, they were able to run up such a big number because it really just snowballed. We talked about the injuries. We also talked about how, it just kind of felt like there were a lot of big plays. It felt like Illinois was kind of there because they were in the game really until midway through the second quarter. Like the first quarter, it was pretty close. It looked like it was going to be a good game. And then, Indiana's up a touchdown. And then in the second quarter, like especially the second half of the second quarter, they really start piling on. And then the game just snowballs and gets away from them. And so I think that like the mental aspect of it was a big part for Illinois, and it just really, really, really snowballed. And, I think Iowa's a team that really takes pride in every down, and that's kind of how their program has always operated. And like, even if the outcome is clear, they're still trying to win every down and still, so I think that because of that identity and because Curt Signetti is self-aware, he doesn't really want the voters and the outsiders who perceive his program to feel like there was a drop-off against a team who may finish with a worse record than Illinois at the end of the year. He's just trying to say like, no, Iowa's a better team. When like, are they a better team? I wouldn't say that they are. And I would, and I could very easily see Illinois finishing the season with a better record. I don't think that Iowa is going to be dramatically better from here on out. But like I said, I just think Signetti knows how the Iowa program operates, and he knows that this is not going to be as impressive of a blowout win this next week, especially going on the road as well to take on the Hawkeyes.
All right, so part of the Signetti angle is getting to Crash's point. Crash has mentioned this a lot, and it really is a very juicy plot point. Was Indiana really that good? Was Illinois really that bad? Just how good are these teams? We're taking the temperature of all these teams at this early part in the season, USC very much included. That leads to this transition, this next question. Should the expectation for USC and the fan base be just win? This could be an ugly duckling. As long as we have more points than Illinois after 60 minutes, it's fine, and the season's on track, and we go into the off week, and then Michigan and Notre Dame having everything to play for. That's all that matters. Or is it important to actually go into a Big Ten road environment, national television, and make a statement, win authoritatively, so that you get the recruiting buzz, you get the national media to say, hey, USC might be back, and you get that swagger, and you get that edge reminiscent of the Pete Carroll era? Is it enough to just win, or does USC need to go in there and go click, clack? Crash first, Ethan second.
I think USC needs to make a statement with this win, Matt. And I think that's because, obviously, for all the reasons you point out, it helps with recruiting. It just helps with everything. It helps get fans excited, especially with the big game in Michigan 2 weeks after. So I think it's just important that USC just comes in and just makes a statement and just really just beats down on the Fighting Illini because of the fact that you've just got so much you need to prove right now. And this honestly is looking like a year that USC can prove it, especially with just it's just how the offense has been playing and just how the front seven has been playing. But I think that really it's just about making a statement and just showing that you've got all things looking good. So really the big thing I want to see, in addition to making a statement, I also want to see the secondary, something we've been hammering constantly, do better. And I think it's definitely a game where they can, especially with how Illinois looked. And I think with everything going on, it's a perfect opportunity for USC to just come in, bring the hammer down, do whatever they want, just really just ruin the early morning party with Big Noon Kickoff in Champaign for the Illini fans, take care of some business, and get on a plane back to LA.
I just want to win, guys. I don't really think that making a statement is really kind of the onus on this game. If we don't make a statement, and even if it's really down to the wire and we just escape with a win, I'm going to be happy with a win. I just think that this also has turned narratively from a statement game to a trap game, because if Illinois still comes into this game ranked in the top 10, then I think winning this game is a statement regardless of how much you win by. But now Illinois is ranked lower and USC's favored to win by like 7.5 points on the road. So USC is, according to all of the national media, supposed to win this game now. So, and I think, as I've talked about, Illinois is going to be motivated. They're at home. USC struggled so much last year on the road. I think just, going in, beating a ranked team, a strong program, and, not letting them take that chip on their shoulder and really have a great game. Like, it's kind of like Russ Campbell saying in the chat, like, a win is a win for me. Like, going into the bye week 5-0, like, this was a game from, March all the way until now when I started coming on the podcast that I was worried about, that, I thought could derail USC's early season. So as long as we get out of there with a win, I think that we can, think about making a statement in 2 weeks against Michigan in multiple ways, including attendance, because USC seems to have gotten some attendance momentum against Michigan State. If USC fans can really dramatically outnumber Michigan fans, that would be really huge. And I also think just, on the football field, it's a team we lost to last year. It's a team that has put together a decent resume so far, given that they beat Nebraska. And I think Nebraska is going to, flirt with the rankings for the rest of the year as well. So I just think getting out of there with a win, getting into the bye, hopefully getting a couple players healthy out of the bye, I'm perfectly okay with that.
Yeah, I would say that with the off week coming up, just being 5-0 going into that 2-week break, it means everything. And so, give me an ugly duckling if that's what it takes against Illinois. All right. Our friend Gerardo Zalata, after 3 games, which Big Ten teams have QBs that can be rounds 1 or 2 NFL picks upon leaving college? Gerardo, I think we're about to find out. Dante Moore versus Drew Aller in the Oregon-Penn State Super Showdown, the biggest game of the week. What are we going to see? And, as Jaden Mayava gets into the teeth of this schedule, what are we going to see from him as the competition gets a lot tougher? Julian Sayin, Ohio State, it is up in the air, and we're about to find out. Like this is now the time when we begin to find out what these Big Ten quarterbacks are made of. I'm just going to take care of that question, guys. The next question I have for you as we wind down our show here at the Voice of College Football is and this is a quick one. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1, you're totally chill. It's all good. We got this. 10, runaway panic. Run to the hills. How concerned are you on that 1 to 10 scale about the early body clock element of this game? It's not something USC is used to. And, most of the games last season, in fact, you go through them, Maryland, Minnesota, Michigan, they weren't those early bird kickoffs. So Ethan and then Crash, just on that scale of 1 to 10, how concerned are you about the early body clock kickoff?
I'd say right now I'm at like a 5. I think that it's still a concern for me. I think especially because this is an earlier game than the Purdue game, and because they still seem to be leaving on Friday. That's just never going to be my favorite, so it's always going to be a concern for me. I think because this game is so clearly a game where they can just execute what their previous identity has been, and they don't seemingly need to do anything extremely crazy to pull this one out. If they run the ball like they did against Michigan State and they pressure the quarterback like they did against Purdue, they're going to be just fine. So I think that the coaching staff, in the midst of some of the fatigue that they may be experiencing, the travel fatigue, the adjustment to the new time zone, whatever, can just make it simple in their minds by saying, like, just be you guys, just be you guys, just be you guys. And so for that reason, I'm not too worried about it. If it was a similar turnaround against a better team, I'd probably be at like a 7 or an 8. But right now, I'd say I'm about a 5. But that obviously could change based on how the game goes for sure.
I'd say I'm at about a 4 here, Matt, just because I think it's, like I said, I think as we talked about, I think it's a game USC should be able to do what they want. and I think they're going to be able to get adjusted early. Obviously, I think that could drop down to a 3 or 2 for me if the team opts to leave a day earlier. And I mean, that wouldn't be the first time we've seen it. Michigan's Jonathan Smith notably said that he had Michigan State get to Los Angeles on Thursday night last week for their game against USC. So it wouldn't be the first time, obviously. I mean, they are coming the other way, but just considering they had the late kickoff, it's kind of the opposite effect that some of those more, especially teams on the East Coast, have to, where their body clocks would normally be at kicking off at 11 p.m. So I think if USC just, can really just get started early and ideally leave a day earlier, I mean, it doesn't seem like they will, but if they would, and I'm not too worried, but still, I think it could definitely be beneficial. And I think if they start strong too, that'll also just get me if they just are like, all right, we're awake, we're here, it's game time, my worry's going to drop pretty quickly.
Yeah, I'm at an 8. Because of Lincoln Riley's travel and logistic plan, that does not inspire confidence. And I do think Illinois is going to treat this game as a Super Bowl because, Illinois, if it wants to do anything this year, has to win this game. Forget about losing to 53. Just the fact that Illinois already has a Big Ten loss. Illinois' season is basically down the tubes if it doesn't win here. So I see Illinois, loading up in the first quarter, just being really revved up, and USC needs to meet that challenge early. I think this is a first quarter game. I think if one team comes out with a 14-0 first punch haymaker, that's going to be your winner. I think this is a game where the first quarter is going to have more of an influence than a lot of other football games. A lot of times, you can kind of ride it out, feel out the opponent, work your way back if you stumble early. No, I think this is a first quarter, first half type of game. Now, if it's tied, then I think that will be good enough for USC. But if USC has a 14-0 lead and blows it, that would be really disappointing. I wouldn't expect it. I think if USC does get up 14-0, Illinois' already shaky confidence is going to plummet. And the other thing, if USC gets a 14-0 lead early, you can just get that pass, send that pass rush, right? Illinois is going to have to throw the ball all the time, and that's when the USC's defensive front can just get after Luke Altmaier, and it can snowball negatively for Illinois. All right, folks, it is prediction time. It's the end of our show. And by the way, just got to point this out. I heard he's leaving Thursday. Well, that would be absolutely fantastic. And maybe that's because it's an early kick. Would certainly maybe I go down from an 8 to a 6.5 if that is indeed the case. So that is good to hear from Jeff Rodriguez. But anyway, end of the show, prediction time. And so USC favored by 6.5. The over-under 59.5. And last week, if you watched us, I had Michigan State plus the 17.5. I had the over, and the over was the main play, and the over was an easy cash. So obviously, for those in California, you can't engage in sports betting. But if you were in a sports betting state and you watched our show, you easily cashed with the over 55.5. USC and Michigan State putting up 76 points. So Ethan first. Crash second, any spread or total play for USC versus Illinois?
I just think that based on what I've seen from USC's offense, taking the over seems wise. They really haven't put up less than 36 points in any game. So I think that, and they've only punted 3 times. So I just think that if there's any offense to be confident in, especially with, Illinois' struggles on defense so far this year, that USC is the offense to be confident in. I'd stay away just from betting either way on the spread. I think it could be a trap, especially if I could see USC winning this game by 6, which would obviously be really, frustrating if you took, USC to cover. So I just stay away from that generally, and I'm not really leaning either way on it. I just think that 7, especially if it's at 7.5, that's one that I'd stay away from for sure.
So I think probably this game, I'd take the over on the score, but I think USC is going to cover, especially if they can just, start strong, start early. I think they'll be able to really impose their will on the Illini early, and then I think probably run away with it. So I think for that reason, I'm going to go, but also until I see better things from, secondary, I think Illini could also get some points too. So that's why I think that it'll be over on the score. And then, but I think USC is going to cover though.
Jeff Rodriguez, better win by more than 6. So, okay, we'll leave that one there. There are some games in which you have a really good feeling. Like I had a great feeling about the over last week against Michigan State, and my instincts were rewarded. This week, I don't have a good feel. I think the morning kickoff just really can be, it invites weirdness, and also Illinois getting beaten down so badly. If Illinois had lost to Indiana like 24-14, pedestrian score, modest margin, that would be one thing. But Illinois losing by 53, you're either going to see Illinois just surge back and play a great game, or you could see Illinois collapse. And I don't know which way that's going to go. And same for USC. Like, we could see this team absolutely dominate, and especially if Illinois' injuries in the secondary can't be plugged up, USC could just absolutely have a field day. But USC struggled in these situations. I don't mean early kickoff. I just mean, important Big Ten road games last season. Like Purdue is not in the same weight class or the same conversation as this Illinois game. There is a part of me that's doubting Thomas, and I need to see a USC team coached by Lincoln Riley go on the road in an important, high-stakes, high-profile game and put the hammer down. I need to see it first. So I would lean slightly to the over. I would lean slightly to Illinois plus the 6.5. But I have no official play here, because I would recommend passing on this game. There are better games to bet on